I've got quite the story to share with you all, and no, it's not of Trevor's vasectomy.
Whoa! Dude, I love gay people now!
No, we're a good guy. We're trying to save the kids. Look, we're saving you! Saving!
Okay, so I was born in... currently live in Mount...
Welcome back, everyone, to the finale of this wonderful, way too long trilogy of us reviewing the Chimera Ant arc. I am joined, as always, by my other person who reads, Kyle. Say hi to the crowd.
Hi, everyone.
And so today, I have finished the Chimera Ant arc. Not today, like whenever you guys are watching this, but like today, whenever we're recording it. It was a little under half, and let's just go ahead and get into my general thoughts on it.
Yeah, let's just get into the meat and potatoes.
So I have had a lot of time to marinate over this, and Kyle and I, we've actually talked about it a little bit. He was driving back to his place, and he stopped by mine for a little, so we talked about it for a second. We talked about it for a little bit once he got back, too. Not too much, but just kind of organizing my thoughts. So originally, after I finished it, I thought it was good, but I wouldn't call it one of the best shonen arcs.
And now?
Now I could always see it, but now I can see it more. Like, I don't doubt that if I sit on it more and I watch more stuff and I read more stuff on it, I will eventually come around to see it as such. It's
okay,
just,
cool.
I think for me, it was a mix of, like, I was expecting, like, some big, insane thing to happen, and, like, no big, insane thing happened. I mean, there was the one thing where, Gon becoming an adult and killing Pitou. That's like the big, insane moment. But I don't know. It just, it wasn't as big and insane as maybe I was expecting. I think kind of expecting that rather than the slow burn that the Chimera Ant arc is. I think that kind of warped my initial perspective of it, and also there was some stuff in the Chimera Ant arc that I didn't care for, not very much. We'll get to it specifically. It was the octopus guy and the end of the Yuppie and Knuckle fight, and we'll get into that more specifically whenever we get there. But as time has gone on, I've gotten as time it's been a couple hours since I finished at this point. I like it more and more, and so I don't doubt. As of right now, can I call it as good as Shibuya or Marineford? I don't know, but I don't doubt that I will get there. And talking with Kyle and really exploring everything will help a lot. And I think what it is it has a ton of good elements. It's just a couple of things I think hold it back. But just as I get more of a full picture of everything. Yeah. So you have any beginning comments, Kyle?
I was going to say, hopefully with our discussions of it, I can hopefully try to provide enough input for you to change your mind on certain aspects of it. For moments like Ikago that we'll get to specific ones, I can't necessarily change your mind on that. I'm sort of indifferent on him, but at least in terms of maybe the Knuckle versus Yuppie thing or exploring the scope of the arc, I hopefully you can come around and change your mind on it. And hopefully with what we talk about. So yeah. I say hopefully a lot because I can't willingly change someone's mind. I can only provide my input and then see what you think about it. So let's get right into it, because at the start of it we get a pretty good, pretty fun break into the palace, both inside and out.
There's a little bit went on before, so we got our intro. I think we had met him before, but it's the wolf guy. I can't remember his name. Welfin?
Yep.
We get our introduction to Welfin, and he is looking for Palm. I can't 100% remember why. But basically, no, it's because he wanted to get closer to the minister guy, so like he could become king. So he was looking for Palm to do that. And then we get more King and Komagi stuff real quick. We get that she's sad that Meruem never gave her his name. Obviously, he didn't know it. But she is sad. So it just kind of shows her perspective some. And we'll get more into them. But
like right after the introduction, because we have two different introductions to, well, not introductions, but two different groups attacking. We have the aerial raid made by Netero and Xeno, and then the group that intercepts from the inside due to Nov's ability.
Yeah.
The stuff on the outside, it's such a fun beginning to it, where Xeno and Netero are dropping from above. Where we drop in obligatory.
The Fortnite arc.
Whenever Pitu goes to hit the one dragon, it splinters off and attacks the entire castle. It just starts right off with a bang, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was, whenever I saw Xeno, I was like, yo, dude, it's Kilo's grandpa. I was like, what? I thought that him and Netero might have been like old friends, but actually that's not the case. Netero says like, yeah, he paid for him to be here, and all he did was just that beginning part with like initially raiding the castle and doing that.
Well, I think he would have done more, but as we're about to get to, during that initial air strike of the dragon heads, he accidentally injures Komagi. Like he didn't know Komagi was there, and you know, as a prideful assassin who takes pride in the fact that they only kill the targets that they're paid to, it's sort of a disgrace to get an innocent bystander mixed up in it. So I think that's why he left.
Yeah, it could be. And also we see before this, the raid proper starts.
On the inside.
And actually right before this, there's something else I want to touch on with the king, where he's like, what is my existence? He's like, is my existence to have yes men around me and to rule over mindless peons and to just do nothing? He's like that would be so boring if that's what's actually the case. And it sets up more of his character later, where I will go ahead and say this. I think Meruem is one of the best written antagonists in anime. It's just, man, he's good.
He's very good. From our previous discussions and our discussion that we're having now, I would agree with that. I mean, he's just one of the best written.
And we get before we see Komagi's injured. Yeah, the initial raid and Pito he's freaking out a little bit. He's like, what's going on? Also, you have Poof and Yuppie who are going around. Whenever it's all happening, they're freaking out. And whenever they go into the castle, Yuppie is waiting there for them. And the Yuppie fight starts.
Well, hold on. I don't think Yuppie knew that they were there. I think Yuppie was just waiting. Like he was
Yuppie was waiting. And they invaded the castle before the strike started.
Yeah, by pure chance, they just ran into Yuppie.
And so they were there. And the fight with Yuppie begins. And they do the plan where it's Knuckle and Chameleon, right?
Yeah, Melioron.
I
think I remembered his name. Yeah, Melioron.
Okay. And so it's them. And so the plan is to put APR on Yuppie, and we'll get into that. But the plan is to put APR on Yuppie and
wait.
And the group is Melioron, Knuckle, and Shoot are supposed to take Yuppie. And so they start that, but then as the kind of fight starts, then everything hits down from the ceiling. And at this point, Gon starts rushing Yuppie, and people are like, what's going on? Kilo is the first to get it, and then it's Morel after him. And they're like, oh my gosh, they're like, with all that, we don't know if Knuckle and Melioron are still alive. They're like, and if it's like, we have to assume that they're not, because we just don't know. It's like they could be dead, they could be like invisible dead. It's just they don't know. And Gon is the first one to just realize, he just immediately realizes, like, well, if they can't fight Yuppie, then someone has to. And so he goes up there. And then we get Shoot. Shoot had a lot of really cool character development this arc. I went from not really caring about him to being like, hey, yeah, no, he's pretty cool.
He's a pretty cool guy. And then we also, like, later, we see that Knuckle and Melioron are okay, because Knuckle just hits him while he's invisible.
Yeah. When we get Shoot being like, being like, Gon, like you're a real one. And Morel he's like, even Killua noticed before me. Again, just looking more at our protagonists and being like, okay, they're legit. Gon's legit. Gon is such a good protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Have I ever told you that, Kyle? Have I ever told you that Gon is just a good protagonist?
I don't know if you have.
I think I might have mentioned it. I mentioned that I liked him a lot.
I think you mentioned it once or twice.
He's a very good protagonist.
Yeah, and same with Killua as the deuteragonist.
Uh-huh. And so the beginning of the fight is cool.
Yeah, where Shoot has to hold him off and do he's flying on it. I forget what he's flying on, but he's just flying around, taking all the brunt of the blows from Yuppie.
Yeah, but then after that first little bit, P2 activated his inn and to find out where the king was, and he saw the king with Komagi, and he goes in there, and he finds the king holding Komagi, who's been injured. And I don't know how it was portrayed in the anime, but in the manga, the king's face was just completely blacked out. So it's like, what is he thinking right now?
Yeah,
and you think he might burst out in rage, and that's what I thought he was going to do. I thought he was going to be just completely pissed, but then he doesn't. And
hey, that's what you expect him to.
And kind of whenever that happens and Pito goes in, Netero and Zeno also walk in. And they're going to attack him, but they, like the narrator in the manga said, like even they couldn't disrupt this just objective show of human compassion or compassion towards human life.
Yeah, and that's what happened.
And it was the king like slowly putting Komagi down and being like, "Batu, heal her."
And then he says, if you want to fight, let's go fight away from the palace where there won't be any more unneeded injuries.
Yeah. He's like, that's your goal, right? He's like, that's what you want? He's like, let's go. And so as he walks past them, it showed that Netero and Zeno themselves were like, okay, this dude's serious.
Yeah, well, for a second they slip up, they're not paying attention, and he's able to walk right by them without the two of them even realizing.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah, in the anime, they're distracted by the moment, and by the time they realize it, Miriam's just walked right past, and they're both just standing still, oh my god, this is he's too much.
And it's at this point I believe Zeno leaves.
Yeah, Zeno sends them off on the dragon somewhere. He sends them far away from the palace, and then is this when Chi2 shows up?
Not yet. That's a tiny bit later. Goat of the arc, honestly.
Okay, because I thought that happened right when Zeno was leaving.
No, it's a little bit. It's a little bit after this part. He's not technically left yet. We get to see Killua and Gon going off to find P2. Killua killed some ants, which started the whole Gauko thing. I didn't write much notes on the Gauko thing because I didn't really care about it, and it really didn't do anything.
That's fair. It's not a huge important thing to talk about from this arc.
Yeah, and so then we see Gon. He's going to try and find P2 to find him. And we have the Morel starting to fight Poof, and this is whenever he traps him in his little smoke prison, I believe.
Smoky jail.
Yeah, is that what it's called? Smoky jail?
I think so.
Cool. Yeah, so he traps him in that, and that's a whole little thing. Morel throughout these couple fights, I enjoyed him, but really, I don't think any fight of his is ever going to top the Chi2 fight.
No.
I'll agree with you there, Kyle.
I'll say this: I think his fight with Leol is equally good, but I still prefer Chi2. I think those two fights are pretty good, and the thing that happens with Poof isn't necessarily a quote-unquote fight. It's Poof just outsmarting him with his power of where he can break up into little clones. So that's what he does. He's like, all right, fine. He goes into his cocoon. He just sends out his other clones. So he's like, oh crap, I have to deactivate it. He gets Morel to deactivate it, and then he just flees.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a fight.
That hasn't strictly happened yet. Just the start of that fight.
Okay, yeah.
There was a cool little moment after this where Gon is trying to find Patu and he can't. And then he sees Netero, Zeno, and Meruem walking out, and then Netero looks over at Gon and points towards the room where P2 is and kind of like smiles at him. Netero, and we'll get into this during his fight, and I have a lot of thoughts I want to talk to you about Kyle. I already told you this. He is such an interesting character in how he's written.
Very. There's a lot of like we see his backstory, and then even then the backstory doesn't necessarily elaborate on everything about Netero.
Yeah, but it's cool to see him. Anytime we see him, he's legit.
Can I ask you one question?
Of course.
Does this recontextualize a lot of what you saw during the first Hunter exam where they were playing with the ball in the room?
In what way?
Like seeing, we'll talk about the fights in a minute, but seeing Netero fight and his strength, just looking back on it when he first meets Gon and Killua.
I just realized a really cool parallel, though, thinking about it. His first and last fights, he at the end, he's using one arm and one leg.
Really? Wow.
I can't remember if it's the exact same arm or leg, but I just realized that.
If it is, that would be amazing I don't remember if I think the OP during the Chimera arc had him standing on like one leg using one, like his arm, he wasn't missing them, but I think he was just standing on one leg using one arm.
Yeah.
Very good foreshadowing, at least in the manga. I didn't pick up on that. Yeah, that's a good comparison or parallel.
But like his fight hasn't started yet, and it doesn't start for a second.
No, they're just going there, and then after that, that's when Gon and Killua meet with Pito, right?
It's a second before that, or a second after that. It's Knuckle and Shoot versus Yuppie, and this is the brunt of the first phase of the Yuppie fight. I will say Yuppie impressed me during this arc. My least favorite moment from it comes from the end of his arc, but it isn't towards him, it's more towards Knuckle. I enjoyed seeing his growth. Coming from kind of like, being like the ant that like no one really knew or cared about, and had the simple one, and it's described as like he didn't have any human in him; it was only magical beasts, and yet even despite that, by the end he was able to create a human personality, and I think that Yuppie throughout all of this, not more so than Meruem obviously, but on a smaller scale, represents a lot of what the arc is trying to be doing in how are ants different from humans. Just going ahead and saying it in case I forget to later. The theme of the theme of this arc, at least how I understand it, is how are humans different from ants, and it pulls off the whole haha funny humans are the real monsters, that real generic trope, but it pulls it off really well.
It does it right.
It does do it right.
Because as I was saying earlier pre-recording, it shows different perspectives from each side. It's not saying all humans are monsters and all these monsters are good people. We get to see different types of humans and different types of what we would see as quote-unquote monsters, like the Chimera ants. We see some of them can change for the better, such as Yuppie or Meruem, and then we also see ones like Poof and P2 who are really selfish and don't grow to become better people. And then the same thing with the human side. We see someone like Killua throughout the entire series go from just an assassin who's just listening to what his family wants to his own person. And then we see people like Gon and Netero, which we'll touch on in a bit, turn for a darker tone.
It's the ideas of identity. Mm-hmm. And I think Hunter x Hunter really explores that very well. The first phase of the Yuppie fight, it's simple enough. Shoot gets to do some stuff. Like I said, Shoot. I really liked Shoot this arc. Knuckle having to hold himself back. I like Knuckle enough. He's probably my least favorite character, like major character from this arc.
I'm guessing that happened after the APR moment.
Kinda, and I mean, just his personality, where he's supposedly a pro hunter, yet he'll always put his emotions in front of the mission. You know? Like, in small doses, sure, but like it happens every time.
I think the problem, like, we just met him, and it's not like we've seen him throughout the entire series, and this is the first moment where he does it. And it's like we're introduced to him, and we're introduced to the fact that he is a nice guy, and that he'll put, as you said, like, I think it shows the dangers of putting emotion in front of what needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily a bad theme to explore, but he's never punished for it. He never has the consequences of his actions. And I'm not saying like, oh, he deserves to die, but like it's, I think it's an idea that can be done well in moderation, and it is certainly not done in moderation with him.
Yeah, because
he escapes death. I can think of 3 different times this arc he escapes death when he really should have died.
Yeah. What's it? Phase 1 is with Shoot, and then isn't phase 2 of it whenever Knuckle shows up and then he starts fighting him?
Yeah, phase 2 I think is after he kind of finds out that Yuppie finds out he can explode, and he goes into like that new form.
Well, okay, very interesting about Yuppie I want to bring up. Like, Patu and Pof have very distinct, like, they have their own animals, like cat and butterfly. Yuppie is, from the beginning, like, he just sort of is a blank slate, which allows for a lot of creativity. Like, he's the most simplistic of the 3 in the beginning, which is the most dangerous later on when he is a blank slate and can just use his mind to transform into all these different shapes. Like, whenever he goes rage mode, he becomes a centaur and grows a shield with a beard. It's so odd.
Yeah, I mean, I like most of his fight. It's just my biggest problem this arc. Other than Hidalgo or whatever his name is, I just didn't care about him, and I found anytime he was on screen, honestly, kind of annoying.
Hidalgo?
Yeah. He's probably my biggest dislike. I think, personally, to put it in a better way, Knuckle is the most missed opportunity. Man, that's not necessarily the correct way to put it. I was a bit disappointed by Knuckle and his character throughout the arc.
Yeah, because
I don't necessarily think my mind will change much on that.
That's fair.
It's just it happened one too many times.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to say to sort of wrap up Knuckle and Yuppie was the fight was good, and then we get to the moment of Yuppie, being an intelligent ant, starts to put together like, okay, they can either like teleport or turn invisible. He finds out it's invisibility, and he gives Knuckle the choice because APR is very close to bankrupting all of his net. But
we can talk about that. That's a while in the future.
Oh, I mean, is there anything like super important throughout this fight?
I mean, not throughout the fight, but there's some super important stuff that happens in between.
Happens what?
That happens in between.
True.
What you call it? So yeah. So
I'm just thinking about it like
this is just the first part. Here we have Zeno leaving, and he meets up with Gon and Killua outside the room, and he says, "You guys can make." He's like, "I only know the mission. You guys can make the call." And we get to here is the beginning of Gon and Patu. I say it Pito because I think it's spelled more like Pito, but I guess you've watched the anime, so you know the pronunciation more.
Yeah, I'd say Patu.
Patu. So we get to the beginning of that, where Gon goes in and he sees him there. All the stuff with Gon and Patu is very good, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
Especially this beginning part where, I mean, especially, but you get to see Gon go in and he sees Patu. And he's like, we're going to fight. And Patu like stands in front of Komaki, and he's like, no, wait. He's like, wait. Wait. And Gon is like going insane, and he's like going to kill him. And Patu, like, he needs time. He's like, I need to protect her for the king. And they likened his stand specifically, and this was Killua noticing all of this. Noticing Like it's like a mother protecting her child.
Yeah, and also I'd say one thing I made a compare or that I just remembered, like Gon's also getting pissed that he's like, okay, well you're healing this random girl, why couldn't you do that to Kite? Like,
yeah, he's like, you're gonna be nice now.
Yeah, like right now, like you couldn't have been like this beforehand. You really had to do that to my friend, and then Gon's threatened to like straight up kill Komagi and Patu, like just try to kill him, right?
Yeah.
To which Killua,
and he doesn't even notice Komagi at first. It takes P2 and Killua pointing it out for him to notice it.
And Killua also brings up the fact like he's the only one that can restore Kite, and so begrudgingly we get the infamous Gon fucking pissed pose where he sits knee like to his arm to his mouth.
I had seen that. I'd seen it in a meme or something somewhere. And whenever I saw Pito for the first time, I thought I was like I wonder if that like it rang a bell, and I was like, yeah, no, I had seen like a clip or something like that before.
Yeah, and Gon is fucking pissed, and he agrees like, all right, 1 hour after that, you're coming with me to that castle, and we are going to fix Kite. She's like, okay.
Well, first Patu is like, he's like I need 3-4 hours, and Gon is like, you have 1 hour. And he said, and then you're coming with me, you're fixing Kite, and then you're dead. And we learn later from Patu that he was like, that was a bluff. He was like, I only needed an hour. He's like, but now he's shaving 10 minutes off of that. He's like, did he notice that I got done with the surgery early? And so it's just, Gon just kind of goes breast mode this episode, I feel.
Gon, in a better wording of it,
He's saying you can word it better than going breast mode?
Tunnel vision.
He goes breast mode.
He's very tunneled in and is blocking out the rest of the world. He's basically like seeing red. He's just very pissed and he's not thinking straight. All he wants is Patu to go with him to fix Kite. That's honestly, I don't think Gon even cares about like much of the other people. I think like first and foremost, he just cares about this one thing that he's trying to do, being very selfish.
Yeah.
And then what happens after that? I think you're better at dictating the order because I just remember like all the fights happening at once. I don't remember what happens when.
Yeah. I have my notes here with stuff happening in order.
Okay.
Yeah, and so going in P2 and that whole thing starts. The wolf guy is playing Among Us because he's trying to find out who the imposter is.
So yeah, Welfin's thing. I like Welfin's power. It's simple enough. He can ask a question, and if it's a lie, it shoots a missile, right?
Yeah, that sounds correct.
It's like a lie detector that has consequences where you have to tell him the truth.
After that, we have this was Yuppie escaped and goes, and this was him going out to the beginning of phase 2. Knuckles going after him because like whenever he was leaving, Yuppie didn't even kill shoot. He just looked at him like he was trash, and Knuckles like, oh, I'm gonna show him what for. And the narrator said that was a mistake, so I was like, is that foreshadowing Knuckles' death? And then later I'm like, no, Knuckles gonna die, and then he doesn't. And then we get funny scene with Zeno and Cheeto.
That I like that. In the anime it was hilarious because we see Zeno leaving and Jitu comes bothering him and he's like, hey, come on, old man, fight me. And he's like, you better watch your surroundings. And Chitu's like, you're stupid, nothing's gonna happen to me. And then Silva drops in from above and shatters his skull. Apex Battle Royale. He does the Newcastle like 2-hand slam on him. Just absolutely annihilate Cheetu.
I saw Cheetu come up to Zeno. I was like, oh, that's it. I was like, Rip King.
He's done. I just love Cheetu. I know he's such an annoying character, but I think in the role that he's given, he works well. He doesn't have too much of screen time, and for the amount of time that he does get on screen, like his fight with Morel, trying to get another power, like you said, at the end of the volume where he's getting new power, it just starts with, why would you want to power slower than yourself? Like he provides good comedic bits to level out some of the more important tension in the arc.
And we also learn here from what's his Silva? Is that his name?
Silva.
Silva. Oh, it's like Noel's last name from Black Clover.
but we don't talk about that.
We don't talk about Black Clover. We see Silva and Zeno talking to each other, and they knew about Illumi's needle that he put in Killua.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. I assume we'll get more stuff on them later.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have phase 2 of the Yuppie fight, which we already kind of talked about. He can explode, and he knows how to control it. He fakes his rage to get Knuckle to attack. Knuckle almost dies, but doesn't thanks to Killua. And Killua uses Godspeed against Yuppie.
Oh, that was a good moment. Yeah, before Yuppie can morb again, we see Killua paralyzing him with electricity in his Nen, just keeping him in place, beating him around. It was a good moment for Killua.
Yeah. What you call it? I'm looking forward to seeing that animated. Because it was cool in the manga, but I bet you, I can guarantee you it'll be a lot cooler in the anime.
It is. I can guarantee your guarantee. It is a lot cooler in the anime.
Okay, cool, based. Then we get another little octopus guy scene where he tries to kill the wolf guy. He's like, I can't. I'm a coward. I didn't really care for that. I don't care for any of the octopus guy. Just being completely honest. If he's your favorite character, I hate you. Next we get the kind of the second half of the Morel and Poof fight, where he gets tricked into freeing him. Tricked into freeing him. He gets away, but then Morel goes to help Knuckle fight Yuppie. Also kind of. I think. Let me check real quick. I think this transitions into the end of the Yuppie fight. Yeah.
Well, there's one thing I want to bring up that Poof takes. He takes Morel's weapon and throws it in a river somewhere.
Yeah.
So now Morel doesn't have his smoke reserves, and he only has enough to barely help Knuckle.
But also, it's said later by the narrator that that was the perfect time for Morel to help Knuckle.
Mm-hmm.
If it was any other time, then it wouldn't have worked. And so it all worked out for them. And it said that's also a result of Morel's training and his experience there.
Yeah, and then is this where we get to see the APR moment?
Yes, we. Well, first we got a little moment before we go on that tangent, where Poof comes into the room with P2 and Gon, and Gon's like, "You're not moving." He's like, "You're staying right here." I was like, "Okay, Slay King."
And then Poof did, but didn't at the same time, because he just left a clone in there and then sent his other pieces of himself out.
Yeah. And it was just cool, and it was funny to see P2 like Poof, please don't move, please. He's just begging him.
And then Poof's like, okay, sure, fine.
He's like, you don't understand, bro.
Yeah, and now, Brandon, do you want to get into the tangent?
Knuckle, it's complicated.
Explain the ending of it.
Where the end of the Yuppie fight, yada yada yada. They're doing good. Morel's Smoke and Knuckle are fighting him, and APR is going up, and it is almost to the point where it's going to bankrupt him, and then Yuppie will be out of the fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
At this time, though, Yuppie wounds Morel, and then Chameleon is taking Morel away. And Knuckle comes up to fight him because Yuppie is going to find Morel from the blood trail, even with God's
accomplice.
God's accomplice. Even with God's accomplice active, he's going to find them. And Knuckle, being Knuckle, as I don't care for, comes up to him and he's like, I'll fight you. Threatening to ruin the entire plan. And Chameleon's like, what do I do? So what he chooses to do is he chooses to let Morel go so Morel can influence Knuckle to stop this and to run so they can beat Yuppie. One of the three strongest ants other than the king.
Yeah.
And Knuckle deactivates APR on the thing of Yuppie says, I'll let him live if you do. And
he does it.
And so it's complicated. Because I can almost guarantee you the defense of this moment. I don't know if you know, Kyle.
I'm not checked, but explain how I'm going to be cringe. Explain my defense beforehand.
The defense of this moment being, well, the theme of the arc is what's the difference between humans and ants, and showing that ants can grow too. And Yuppie's arc throughout this has been his growth. And you can say, well, this is the climax of his growth, where he doesn't kill them. I get it. I understand that that's what the author was trying to go for. And then specifically with Knuckle after being like, I couldn't. He's not a bad guy. I get what Togashi was going for. What are you going to say, Kyle?
Sorry, I just want to add one thing. This moment, I am okay with this moment, other than I don't remember this. Knuckle saying that he's not a bad guy. If you exclude that, I think the moment is fine enough, because Knuckle puts his emotion.
It's fine. If you exclude that, it's fine. No, it's really that line that set me over the edge. So I understand it. I just think it wasn't written super well.
Out of everything in the Chimera arc, I will agree with you. That's one of the moments where, like, had it not been for that line, the moment would have been like, okay, cool. It sucks that they couldn't get him, but Knuckle wanted to spare Morel, and Yuppie showing his growth allows them to live through fellow recognition of a warrior. It almost felt like a Wamu moment, where it's like he recognizes them as fellow fighters, and it's like, you know what? You guys fought valiantly. You've lost. I'm gonna let you go. Bye. But adding the line of Knuckles saying he's not such a bad guy, dude.
He literally is.
Just because, like, he's grown. We've explained that he's grown, but I guess that's Knuckle being too naive. I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, even thinking of Meruem, we'll get into this whole can of worms later, where it's like was he a good guy at the end? Like, obviously, what happened to him? His death is insanely tragic, but he deserved it. Meruem was not a good guy.
At least in the beginning.
Yeah.
A lot of bad
he
things.
did a lot of bad things. Yeah, he needed to die, right?
Atonement.
Or he needed to pay in some way. And death was really the only way he could. It wouldn't be fair to those he killed. As we learn after 500,000. We'll get into all this later. But the ants are bad. There are a few good ants that we see, right?
There's
Colt and the chameleon guy, and Calgo. As much as I don't like his character, he is one of the quote unquote good ants. He is in that camp. But the royal guards and the king are not that.
Yeah, Yuppie might be the nicest of them, but like even then, that's still not saying too much. There's a lot of mixed moral grayness around here, where characters.
If nothing else, you can't say he was a good guy. And that's where a lot of my issue with this moment came from. I will call this my least favorite part of the Chimera Ant arc, and
that's fair.
It says a lot about the writing that's my least favorite part. This is a really good arc.
And even then, the moment we agreed, if had it not been for the one line, it'd have been a fine moment. So your least favorite moment would have been a quote unquote fine moment.
Yeah, and what you call it? It shows a lot about Togashi's writing. But he did stumble a little bit here, and I think in other areas with Knuckles' characters that I personally.
And if people think differently, that's completely fine. I mean, I'm sort of neutral.
Yeah, unless you think differently, in which case it's not fine. We hate you. I hate you, at least. I won't speak for Kyle.
Yeah, I'm in between your opinion and people liking it. I could go either way. I think it's a fine enough moment. It's only a one-off line. It doesn't ruin Yuppie's character or anything. It's more or less
no. It's Knuckle here. I can read my note exactly of what I wrote after this. Knuckle says he isn't a bad guy. He has literally murdered so many people. Dumb opinion. My opinion of Knuckle has decreased by a ton.
Yeah, that's fair. Honestly, that's fair. We can move on past this point because there's not really much to say, but I can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So then what happens next?
After this, we kind of... It was technically kind of in the middle of this, but I just wanted to go ahead and talk about the Yuppie fight, where Meruem and Netero get to their site, and they start talking.
Ooh.
And
well, Meruem starts talking. Netero does not want to.
This is... To say the most interesting dynamic is very loaded.
Oh yeah, we get Meruem and Netero's epic clash. And right off the bat, you can already see a difference in character, at least from what you'd expect, where the villain is the one who's sitting there wanting to talk about things while Netero wants to fight. Like, and again, to re-cement the fact that Meruem's not a perfect guy, Meruem's meeting in the middle is I'll spare a few humans. I'll spare a couple of them. But humans need to go because they're really bad people. To which Netero doesn't try to talk about it. He just wants to fight.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic. Also, we will be back in 1 second.
Okay.
Alrighty, well, welcome back. That was like no time at all for you guys. So yeah, Meruem and Netero. It is such an interesting dynamic between the two of them. Because like you were saying before we went on break, Meruem, the villain, is like, why are we fighting? And it was interesting. Netero brought it because he's saying, like, Meruem was trying to say, I can't remember exactly all, but he was like, he's like you guys, you humans have your own problems. He's like, I could help you fix them. He's like, you could help me help you fix them. He's like, why are we fighting? He said, I came out here to talk to you. He's like, I'm gonna sit here until you want to talk. And Netero was the one, and he said specifically something that was very interesting. Netero looked at him and he said, he has to choose between human and ant, and he doesn't know yet that he has to choose. And Netero himself is such an interesting character in how he's portrayed and how different it is from what you would expect normally.
Yeah, that's a good way of wording it.
Because he's kind of like the old mentor guy, and so you would expect him to have like strong values, but no, he is almost looks like the villain in this fight because he actively wants to fight him and actively tries to fight him, and he even starts fighting him. So we get to see Netero's nin for the first time. The nin that made him, at least at one point, the strongest nin user in the world.
Yeah, and at one point early on, he tells him, like, look, okay, I know you don't want to fight, but I know your name.
Yeah, and so then he attacks him a couple times. We get to see it's like based on like Buddhism. And he mastered it. We get to see a little bit of his backstory by punching 10,000 times each day for like 5 years.
Based.
And we get that was his mastery of his nin. And he starts to attack him, and the king is unfazed, and he gets attacked. He just sits down again. And he's like, did you get it out of your system? He's like, can we talk now? King Netero attacks him a couple more times, and the king's like, I'm not going to fight you. He's like, I can wait until you want to talk. And Netero was like, how can I get him to fight? He's like, he wants to exchange words. He's like, his name. He's like, you want to know what your name is? He said, your mother left it for you with dying breath. He said, if you want to know your name, he said, you're going to fight me and you're going to defeat me, and then I'll tell you. And he was like, fine, I'll play your game. He's like, but I'm not killing you. He said, I want to talk. And so begins the fight, and it's two halves. This was the first half. Was Meruem finally starting to get in there?
Yeah, it's just interesting how, like we said, Meruem's the one who's just like, let's talk about it. I don't want to fight. Fighting, it's pointless. I have what I want in mind. I'm more powerful than you are. But even still, like, I'll talk to you. And then Netero is just trying to instigate, trying to get him to fight. And then he finally does get him to start fighting by just using his name as a bait, where it's like, I know your name, and if you want to learn it, you gotta come kick my ass. And then he's like, fine. And then thus begins the epic battle that we'll come back to later.
Yeah, and you could also say, before we get fully off the topic, you could be like, well, Netero, what you call it? You could say, well, why didn't Netero? You should say Netero is objectively the villain here. Why didn't he talk with him? Isn't negotiating always the best thing? No. Because if Meruem was to succeed and complete his plan, he would decimate humanity.
Yeah,
and he has a respect for humanity through Komaki and also through Netero. I think here maybe in the second half of the fight,
second half,
where he has a respect for humanity, but Netero can't let him go, and so that's part of the complexity of this whole situation. Of like, there is no objective right or wrong, because you could see it either way, It just depends on your perspective of it. And it's so just phenomenal how that was written to be that complex. To be like, who is in the right? Well, no one's really fully in the right.
But at least in Netero's position, you can understand where he's coming from, because, as you said, like, he, just because a hunter, like, in real life, just because one of, like, a human hunter would respect their prey, they're still going to kill it. Like, at the end of the day, like, Meruem respects humanity, but what he plans on doing now, like what he told Netero at the beginning of the fight, I'm going to let a couple of you live, but I'm going to slaughter the rest of you. And so, no matter what, like, good or bad, Netero's fighting to defend his kind against extinction.
Yeah. And so is Meruem.
Yeah.
But it's the case of Netero is almost on the offensive here.
Mm-hmm. Your kind or my kind. It sort of comes down to that.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. And we'll get into the second half whenever it happens. But we have a couple things up next.
What's next?
We have Palm.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah.
You could hear it come back into Kyle's mind. We have Palm come back, and she's been made into an ant. And Killua meets her and fights her. Well, she's asking where Gon is, and then Killua starts fighting her. And also at this time, Knuckle makes it to where Gon is. And okay, yeah, so that comes later. I'm not going to touch on that now. But we just see Knuckle make it to where Gon and them are. And Killua doesn't want Gon to meet Palm, and because he's already in a bad enough mental state.
He's already gone all belief.
Yeah, he's already gone. Right, he doesn't need to see Palm. That would make him go. He would make him go even further beyond.
Implications for later.
Yeah. But then we also have, her new Nen is intro. It's whatever. It's just a little minor fight. Then we have Killua realize, he's like he doesn't want to fight her or whatnot, and so like just kind of as a bluff, he's like, okay, I will. He's like, I will take you to Gon. You want to know where he is? But then it all starts coming out, and we realize this entire time, Killua has been torn up over the fact that he can't reach Gon, and he's basically crying out to Palm, being like maybe you can reach him. He's like if you can. He's like, I can't. He said nothing I say will reach him. He said you have to reach him. I can't remember if it was here. I think it was probably later. Whenever Killua reminisces, and he's like at the time whenever Gon left, he said all I wish that instead of saying I'm going to go do this, he said let's both go do this.
Oh yeah, that's a great moment for Killua, where he's distraught that his Gon's just tackling this burden on his own, and
he just nothing Killua says can reach him. And we obviously know how deep their relationship is and how important it is, especially to Killua. And I've talked on it on length. I'm not going to get back into it. But just to see Killua torn up about this, and very obviously it weighs super heavily on him to where he cries out to Palm like that. And he said, I can't do anything. He's like, please reach out to Gon. It just, Killua, man, Netero and Meruem especially. I think I already said I consider Meruem one of the best written antagonists in anime. Killua, he's such a well-written character, but like it's a different kind of complexity than Meruem's, if that makes sense. You picking up what I'm putting down, Kyle? They're two very different characters, but they're two insanely phenomenal characters. It's hard to compare them.
Oh, of course, because they never even meet.
I love Killua. Honestly, Hisoka is probably still my favorite character. Killua is a close second.
Oh, also, one thing I want to note, Gon never meets Meruem, right?
Oh, he doesn't, does he? Yeah, no, he never does. He sees him. He sees him once on the balcony, but like he never properly meets him.
The main character, like this arc is insane and regarded as one of the best shonen arcs, but the main protagonist never even officially encounters the main antagonist.
Honestly, Gon at least through this part, didn't play a huge role.
And we'll talk about why once we get to it. But isn't what happens with Killua, doesn't that bring Palm back to her senses? And then
it's basically explained that Palm was like created to be like a test version of like how they're going to do their soldiers, where they like disconnect the memories and whatnot. And of course it doesn't work, shonen stuff. I wasn't too big a fan of that moment. But it wasn't bad. It's just not my preference.
That's well, I think it's fine. Like, and
it's fine.
all the allies,
I think it was maybe a little bit of a missed potential there.
It also shows like they're still having a, in theory, perfect removing the memories, because it's not something that you can easily do.
I guess it also brings up the question of like, just in general, how strongly are the memories like always like put on?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I think it's a fine moment, like Killua in tears appealing to Palm Ant's humanity. I think it works. Yeah. So then what after that?
We go back to Gon and P2 with Poof and Knuckle, and Knuckle kind of goads Poof a little bit or whatnot, and Poof leaves to go to the king, right? And that's where we see where Poof was like, he's like, I already left most of my thing. Most of me is already heading towards the king. He's like, I'm going to take this last little bit of me. And it's Knuckle that starts that or something, and P2 is like, Poof, please don't. And then he does anyways, and then P2 is like I'm sorry. I apologize for him. I'm sorry. I'm going just like 10 minutes. He's like, you have 10 minutes less now. He's like, you're gonna finish up. He said you're gonna finish up 10 minutes faster. Then
oh yeah, and that goes against what she's like. I bought myself 10 minutes, and I was like, now you lose 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Gon is just scary during this arc, and we haven't even hit like the climax of that yet. He's just sitting around making all these demands, and he's just continuing his I'm fucking pissed pose.
He's actually frothing right now.
He's coping and seething.
He is coping and seething though. That's so true. But then we see specifically P2 is scared of Gon. And that's kind of this. We've kind of seen it, but this is like the first time that we like really see it.
Yeah, or at the very least, like beforehand, it was just her being scared of losing Komagi and failing the king. But I don't remember if she actually. Whatever. I don't remember. Well, the wiki called it an it, so.
Yeah, the wikis like to do that.
At the very least, P2 we saw was perhaps fearful of letting Komagi die and failing the king, but is it actually shown that P2 feels direct fear of Gon?
Essentially.
Okay, like just a little bit.
It's to the point where I wrote the note of P2 is scared of Gon.
Okay.
After this, there's another little Calgo story, side thing where like he gets the backstory of the wolf guy. Yeah, it's a non-factor.
Welfin's backstory is interesting, being buddies with Gyro, but that's about all I can really touch on.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to learning more about Gyro. It wasn't Chimera Ant. So I don't know. Is it the Chairman election arc? Is it Dark Continent exploration, or is it Succession Contest? I think is the name of the most recent arc.
Succession War. I don't know.
Succession War. I don't know. That's a cool name. That's a cool name for an arc. Succession War. But we'll get there. We will get to those arcs eventually. After this, I believe, yes, second half of the Netero Chimera fight.
This in the anime was just so amazing. With the anime only perspective here, the fight kicked ass, and this was such a great fight showcasing both their strengths, and one of those where you could tie in everything Merum's learned about pattern recognition, pattern solving from Gunji to what he does here in fighting Netero. Because Netero, his nen is he can summon a giant Buddha statue and has 100 different attack patterns that he can do all these different combinations with. And we see Merum, who learned from, at least in my interpretation, learned from his Gunji playing with Komagi in this pattern recognition and was easily able to beat Netero, even easier than usual.
Easily is a bit of a stretch. He's not taking any significant damage.
That's what I mean. Like he doesn't.
But
I'm going off of that. Like he doesn't.
Okay.
Doesn't take any damage. Like it takes him a lot of time to get it down, but I assume that it's quicker. The Meruem that played Gunji with Komagi solves it faster than the Meruem that never played all these games.
Yeah, and this is my second favorite fight in Hunter x Hunter, right after Hisoka versus Gon from Heaven's Arena. Which is still my favorite fight.
Line here. There's just so much on the line with,
and it's so cool to see Netero do this. And I love how they described it as, this entire time with the board games, Meruem's strategy has been, I'm finding their pattern and then disrupting it. He's like, I don't care how random you are. He's like, every person has some bias or pattern. He said, I'm going to find it, and he does. It's described as finding a needle in a haystack, right? And like finally threading the needle. I loved how it was described. It was like he finally found it. He said a bias so slight it could not even be called a habit. He said he found it and he exploited it, and Netero loses his leg.
And then, shortly after, an arm. And then one really cool moment from Netero is when Meruem's like, "Yeah, you don't have an arm. Like, give up."
Well, I think Netero lost his leg a little bit before. I think the pattern was his arm. But dude, when Netero was like, when Meruem was like, "You're bleeding. You should probably start that." Netero was like, "What bleeding?" And then like through willpower alone closed his wound. I was like, "Okay, this dude's legit."
Yeah, and then whenever he's like, "You can't fight," he goes, "Your assumption that prayer is like physical is wrong. You can still pray in spirit." And then he does. Isn't this when he does Zero Hand?
This is when he does Zero Hand. I cannot. So I will say I love Hisoka versus Gon. This is the fight I'm looking forward to most. Watching the anime.
Oh, it's amazing. We're gonna side note. We're gonna get together at some point and watch some of these big highlight moments. But Zero Hand is when he just unleashes all of his power. Everything that he currently is and will be, he puts into this one desperate final attack against Meruem, and it barely does anything. Really shows
basically you, he's like I think he says, "I commend you." He's like, "You really are the pinnacle of humanity." But this is whenever Meruem launches into his thing. He's like, "You're the pinnacle of humanity." He said, "But I'm the pinnacle of evolution." He said, "I am everything humanity has ever strived to be."
Yeah, because I mean, he's part human too.
Uh-huh.
And then one thing I found interesting where he said, like, my respect for you is so deep, and you've, like, I'm changing my mind. Instead of letting a few you live, I will basically, like, he's gonna make a reservation for humans. He's like, I'll leave you a designated land area, and you will be allowed to live there.
Yeah, and he's like, I see now that like strength is to protect the weak who deserve to live.
Which again, a complete flip of his early interpretation of like the strong rule over the weak, and now he's the strong should protect the weak.
At this point, you could almost argue that Meruem is a better person than Netero.
Oh, he is. Like,
and I chose my words very carefully there. It's the way his character is portrayed, especially here, is so good.
I was just gonna say he's on the path of redemption. At least kinda. Not exactly.
Yeah, kinda.
Mentally, he's learning that he was wrong. Doesn't make what he did any better, not to justify his previous actions.
Yeah.
But he's at the very least learning that what he did is wrong. That what he once thought was wrong, and that his misinterpretations of strength, like might makes right, isn't correct, and that, strength should be used to protect those who can't protect themselves. Whereas
and it wasn't necessarily that. He said the weak who deserve to live. And so really, in that moment, he's thinking of Komagi.
He's still biased. He still has bias.
He's still biased, but who isn't?
Of course.
If nothing else, he we already said that this is kind of a battle between two people saving their series, their species from extinction. And so at this point, Meruem is not looking for the complete extinction of humanity, but Netero is still looking for the complete extinction of at least this nest of Chimera ants. Essentially looking for the extinction of the species.
Which is when he pulls out what everyone loves to do in war, nuclear warfare.
Yes. God, man,
That was okay. In the
do
anime,
we want to get into it now? Or
I guess we could, since we're already talking about it.
When do we see the little thing where we get Kingdom of whatever plays? That's a bit later.
If you want to say what happens next for later, I am okay with it. But since we're already talking about it, it wouldn't hurt to touch on it or to talk about it.
We'll talk about whenever another plot point comes up is whenever we'll get into that. But,
Okay, what happens next?
So Netero hooked a nuke up to his heart and nukes the king. It's not called nuke, it's called like the rose or something.
It's what it is it's the poor man's rose, and at least in the anime, Netero has like one of the creepiest fucking faces I've seen in quite some time in the anime, and it says for the first time in his life, like, Meruem felt fear.
Yeah, and it's also then going into part of what we'll talk about with Meruem's death versus Netero's, of Netero died feeling the most negative emotions. He died a hollow death. Before he died, I can't remember exactly what he sighed, but he looked at Meruem and he's like, this is the rage of humanity. He's like, you know nothing about humanity until you know the hatred that dwells within everyone. And that's whenever he feels the fear. And Netero, this, quote unquote hero, dies like that.
He kills
dies
himself
with that kind of mindset and those kind of emotions. Just not looking to save anything, but looking for destruction
of whatever is around him, and it's so disturbing how that could happen. Because again, he straight up just stabs himself in the heart because whenever there was a failsafe installed where they're like, okay, chances are you're not going to be able to beat him, but if you can get him to the testing site, we can trigger the poor man's rose, which is essentially in comparison to our real world, like a nuclear weapon, almost a weapon to surpass Metal Gear, if you will.
You could say its power levels are over 9,000. I'm so sorry.
Okay, awful, terrible memes from us both. It is. What I'm guessing, from what I remember, is the strongest bomb possible, and we'll touch on it later. But at the end of this fight, Netero sets it off, and as Brandon said, in just a violent, hate-filled rage, desperate last attempt, blows both of them up with it.
I love the thing, and this was a Zero hand, where it was described as the most merciful gods, most merciless rage or something.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay. So, and it's also an interesting parallel where Netero is obviously, and his nin is based off of like Buddhism, which practices like inner peace and tranquility and peace towards all. And the way he goes out, just filled with violence and hate. It's some good parallels. It's just, Netero is like just reading this today, like Netero he's written so well.
Yeah, for the limited inclusion he has, because honestly, he seems like somebody that would be more persistent throughout the series, at least alive.
Yeah.
Like, he shows up early on in the very first arc as the chairman. We have all this stuff happen where it's like, minor appearances, and then his grandiose death in this arc where he goes down, laying his life down for humanity. And it's really scary how he goes out, as we've already talked about.
It's not a hero's death.
It's not. It's almost like a villain's death.
Uh-huh. It really is, isn't it? Yeah.
Like going out and like if I can't take, if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. Stabs himself and's like, take upon all of humanity's rage, and then detonation.
After this, obviously Netero's dead, and we see Yuppie and Poof, who are racing towards the king anyways. They see the nuke and they're freaking out, and they go in there and they find him. Well, what remains of him?
What remains of Merom? Yeah.
And he's still alive, but barely. And Poof is like, he's like, I can help. He's like, if he eats some of my cells, like he'll be able to regenerate, right? And,
yeah.
And they start feeding them to him, and the king's like, hey yo, this shit busting for real.
And then both Yuppie and Poof start giving him some of his cells.
Yeah, and then they like climax or something.
Oh, in the anime, that I'll have to show you. It's really weird in the anime.
It was really weird in the manga too.
It's gonna be even worse in the anime just because of the voice acting.
Yeah, Hisoka's scenes are a lot worse in the anime than they were in the manga, from what I've seen.
They're all great.
It's just.
So then what happens next? Because
and this was so weird, is that Yuppie and Poof realized that they had, and this is how they had a mother's love towards the king, towards Merom. That is so
that what it was?
Interesting for their characters.
Like they genuinely care about the king, genuinely.
Yeah, like with the mother's love.
At least Yuppie, Poof still, I'd say at this point.
Well,
still
it said both of them do.
Okay.
They might have different ways of going about it and showing it, but they have a mother's love towards him. It's very, very interesting. Is all I can say about that. That seems to be a very complicated topic that someone on YouTube has probably made like a 5-hour video essay on. I don't really know what else to say about it other than it's very interesting, and I wanted to bring it up that it was said.
Oh God, Brandon, are we about to jump from one really long hero versus villain discussion to another? Is what happens next? I think what happens next.
I believe so.
All right, let's move on from one.
I don't know if it's the full thing, but after it, there is another segment that is very important. It's not the final thing. It's the penultimate thing, I believe, of Gon and P2.
Yeah, and they start going to the castle where Kite is, right?
Yeah, where basically Gon is like, time's up, and P2's like, he's like, what? He's like, it's not even the time he originally set. He's like, yes, I'm done, but like, did he feel me relax, like just like for like just an instant, and he knew that I was done? He was like, I thought I was hiding the wound. He's like, this guy's insane. And then the rest of them show up, Killua and Knuckle and them, and they start talking. And Gon's like, I'm taking Bussy Boy over here, back to the castle to fix Kite. And he said, you guys, he said, stay here with Komagi and have her be a hostage. And I think it was this scene where Gon looked at P2 and was like, if you don't heal Kite, I'm killing her. He was just straight up. He was just straight up. You don't listen to me. Yeah, that chick right there. I have nothing to do with. She's dead.
Yeah, Gon is not a fucking good guy. He's an awful child.
He's as Hisoka would put it, he's a bit naughty.
We've finally gotten to the part where the mask is off. We've ripped off the mask. The facade is gone. Gon is a terrible human being.
And here we get to see Gon's primary character trait on show. And it's a character trait that once you realize that he has it and that he is this, it makes a lot of his other actions make sense and fit into his character so much better. Gon is insanely selfish.
Yes. No, like even dating all the way back to the first exam that they had where he saves Ponzu not because he felt genuine emotion to her. It was like, oh, she'll owe me in the future.
Yeah, he's insanely selfish. Even going back to chapter 1 when he left Whale Island, he didn't care what Mito wanted. He's like, I want to go be a hunter. I'm going to go be a hunter.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, how selfish is that? But it's just you can see it throughout the entire series, and this is the climax of it, where he's like, you're going to come back with me and heal Kite, or I'm killing her. And then I don't know if he said anything, but he said, I'm killing her. And he straight up tells them, he's like, keep her as a hostage.
It ties back.
He's like, keep an eye on her, and both P2 and Knuckle and Kilo, they're all like, he's keeping her as a hostage.
Yeah,
and
so
even Knuckle and Kilo are like, yo, he's gone.
here's something interesting to word it as. It recontextualizes every scene, or like every major scene we've had with Go.
Yes. Yeah.
Where like everything that we've seen him as, the worst moment before Chimera Ant we saw was Green Island, where he was willing to give up like limb just for a single hit, and he didn't care. Also, whenever he was like, "Why don't you come fight us?" and then they're like, "That was incredibly stupid. Your friend is injured. We all could have died." It's unlike any other shonen protagonist. It's what he wants versus what the majority needs.
Yeah, and like him going off the plan all the time. It wasn't just him being shonen protagonist syndrome. Like it was him. Like he's an inherently insanely selfish person.
And literally all the time. Like anytime there's a plan, he doesn't follow it. And it's not like one of those where it's like, I'm like, the Goku mindset. We'll just beat him anyway because we're strong enough. It's like he goes off plan, even knowing that there's a chance where it just won't work, but he wants to because it's what he wants. And that is a dangerous mindset to have. And
it's really cool.
This is the breaking point of it. This is where it all culminates in I'm guessing it happens a little bit later, but it does
happen a little bit later. There's a bit that happens before the is it burnt? Did you drop it in dirt? No, grow up. There's a bit that happens before that.
There's something very interesting I want to bring up where we get to the moment.
The panel. We have the king is back. Like fully, he's fully recovered, but he's lost his memory.
And now here's where I want to interject. I told this to Brandon, even in like JoJo, Weather Report specifically. I am not a huge fan of the memory loss trope. I think, at least in other shows, I think it prolongs a lot of action, and it's only used for characters just to reiterate their feelings. Like if a character forgets their memory, there's like a One Piece filler that has like a memory loss kind of thing, and it's like, you're our friend, and it's like, you're right, you are my friend, and it just feels like it goes full circle without any additional progression for the characters. This is
kind of. You can finish your thoughts. Sorry.
Oh, but I was going to say, instead of progressing a character, it regresses them only to take them back to the state that they were in before they were removed of their memory.
Yeah, what you call it? I read, this was a while back, I read Araki is the author of JoJo. I read his book Manga in Theory and Practice. And he kind of directly referenced this kind of scenario where he was like, you can't have negative progression. He said you can't have a character go so far and then bring him back. He said you can have a character so far and then bring him forward in a negative way. He said, but you can't have a character and then bring him back. And what a lot of memory loss stuff is that it's stalling for time. You start at 1, go back to 0, and then get back to 1 at the end of the story. That's not a fulfilling story. You want to be at 1, go to 2, maybe negatively, that's fine, and then get to 3. And that's the satisfying part. Meruem does that. His memory loss works so well. Especially with what happens, where it's kind of a race for the guards to be like, okay, we need to make sure he can't remember Komagi, and then ultimately that not mattering.
Because here's how I want to work. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, because at this point, we know it in hindsight, but we the readers don't know it yet, and they don't know it yet. The 3 of them are already dead.
Yeah.
They've already been exposed to a lethal amount of radiation.
And
we'll get into that, but it's just,
This moment, the thing I wanted to add is, think about it like in numerical progression, like what you said, if you want to compare it to that. Meruem as a character wants to go from 1 to 2 to 3. but the guard are taking this opportunity to take them back from 1 to 0. So it's a clash between. It's just a race of time between. It's not like they want him to get his memory back. They don't. At least Poof doesn't. I think Yuppie's on board, but they don't want Meruem to remember Komagi. They want him to be the ideal king. But Meruem, in this moment, if he knew, would obviously want to remember Komagi. And spoilers later, we'll touch on it later, he gets his memory back. It's good for reinforcing Meruem's, I'm going to say it, love for Komagi.
Yeah, and you can say love, and that it's not. You can make video essay after video essay on this of it wasn't romantic love, and I don't know if it was romantic love or just a very deep relationship. That's not a question we can answer.
Yeah, I didn't mean romantic love. I just meant like
yeah.
The one of the arguably the strongest love you could give a human being that is a step down from romantic.
And even then, romantic love isn't the pinnacle of love. But that's
no.
This is all a discussion of what is love, and it's a very complicated issue.
Cade, quick, what is love? Free boy, free girl. What is love?
Cade, quickly answer the question.
I'm sorry. Repeat the question. I
What
was
is
not.
love?
I was not fully listening.
What is love?
The concept.
Baby, don't hurt me.
What is the concept of love?
Understand.
Yes, very good.
Wait, Kyle, I forgot he was gay. Quickly, Cade, get out of here. Trevor, come in. We need Trevor in here. Quickly.
Yeah.
Hey, Trevor, what is love?
Love is something that men feel for women, not for other men.
Except for me and you, though.
Yeah. Well,
but that's
we're
not
not
gay.
men.
That's just like a romantic love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you guys can go back now. Thank you for appearing on our show. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I love you, Trevor. Like in a gay way.
I love you too, Brandon.
But like not a gay way, but like romantically.
Yeah.
Like we're like two
we're
men.
in a nice
we,
loving
like
relationship. Not in a gay relationship.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Bye, Trevor. All right, we'll touch on we'll re-explore this with. Sorry, I'm calming down after that.
We have to reorganize our thoughts.
We will return because there's a lot that happens before he gets his memory back. So we'll touch back on what happens when he gets memory back later when he does. But
but before there's a bit of an intersection where getting his memory back. He's heading back to the castle, and Poof wants to kill Komagi before he can get back. Before he can get back and do all of that. Here we have Knuckle attack. That was a cool moment whenever Knuckle just attacked him and put APR on him. And this is also where we see that the king can use Yuppie and Poof's abilities.
Oh, well, hold on. One thing I wanted to bring up. Because whenever he hits the clone, doesn't APR also show up to the real
It
Poof?
does, yeah.
Merriam's like, what the hell is that?
And Poof's like, oh, it's Insurgent. We get to see that the king can use it. So the king has gotten a serious upgrade. That already before there was probably no one in the world that could beat him, but now definitely. And
yeah,
we'll get to his death. But we'll get there.
So here's one thing, because earlier I don't remember how it was explained that the N that Nav felt was actually Poof's N.
Yeah,
and
that was it. It said it in here because P2 was healing the king.
And Poof's N is so insane, and it's multiplied with Meruem, where Meruem's N can just scope out like the entirety of the castle and then some.
Yeah, and also with Yuppie's powers in there, where he can just explode stuff, but like stronger than Yuppie can.
Yes, and also he doesn't have his memory, so that's a blessing and a curse for some of the main characters.
Yes. Here we have, whenever the king gets back, and Poof kind of clears up everything, or at least tries to, the king, like, he feels like something's missing. And he knows that they're hiding something from him, and he's kind of like, okay, let's play a game. But he remembers Gunji. He finds a piece. He doesn't remember Komagi specifically, but he remembers Gunji. And he's like, okay, let's play a game. He's like, I win. You guys tell me everything. He said, you win, I give you an, what you call it. It's the king. And we get, in order for, I can't remember, who does he trick? Oh, yeah. So we have Palm and Killua running around, and Killua has Komagi and all that. And it's funny. She's like, who is this?
Get off of me, the guy.
And the king, I wrote, Poof uses gaslighting to help him kill Komagi. That's whenever he's yelling at her like we'll save you from the we won't let you be taken hostage.
Oh yeah. And she's like, let me go to him, and they're like, no, they're going to kill you.
And Killua knocks her out. And here we have the beginning of it.
Of it, as in it?
As in the thing Wyatt watched all of Chimera.
Ooh. So,
we have Poof call Patu.
Let me give some context for this, because I'm not going to quote him on that exactly, but from what I remember, what I thought he said, we talked about Wyatt on the channel. He's a good friend of mine. has some backwards opinions, and he did two things I want to bring up. One, before Brandon knew anything about Hunter x Hunter, the thing that I've been like foreshadowing that he tried spoiling to Brandon is, quote unquote, Gon skins a cat. And I feel like had Brandon remembered that going into the series, this moment would have not had as much of an impact as he has, because that was a spoiler for arguably the biggest Hunter x Hunter moment. and I was also him that he said like he just was watching that, he was kind of bored by the rest of the stuff and he was just waiting for that, and I told him like that's just tunnel visioning the entirety of the saucy goodness that Togashi's delivered upon this planet in the form
this
of
dude watched Chimera Ant like Gon did. Chimera Ant but Gon POV. That's exactly what it is.
I need to remember that one.
I'll remember it, dude. I'll write it down. I'll tell him.
Okay, I need a minute. It's true. And you want to know what the best thing was? You know what the real kicker is?
What?
He told me that he was excited. He was happy watching Gon beat Patu, which is the complete opposite reaction.
This dude saw the end of Romeo and Juliet, was like, yo, this slaps.
This is fire.
This is so true.
Okay.
So it all starts whenever Poof calls Patu and tells him, and fakes being Komagi, and he's like, I'm fine. He's like, we've recovered her. You don't have to listen to Gon anymore. And then it starts.
Okay.
They get in there.
This is where, yeah. Sorry, go on.
They get to Kite, and Gon's like, heal him. He says, you're here, use your ability, heal him, bring him back. And Batu walks in front of Gon and who's behind Kite, and he goes, You've kept your promises to me. And he says, I respect you for that. He said, so I'm going to respect you and tell you the truth here. I think the exact quote was, that man is already dead. He said, my power can heal people. He said, but he's already gone. He's like, his spirit is not there. He's like, that's just a corpse that I'm puppeting. He said, I can't bring him back.
Yeah, I can preserve corpses, but I can't bring the soul back to the corpse. Kite is long gone.
Kite, and that's what I thought. I was like, Kite. So we've seen Kite already dead. And I was like, I don't think that he can bring people back from the dead.
Again,
and he can't.
In the Gon POV, Kite has a chance to come back, and then after all this painstakingly long waiting, Gon has waited incredibly long. He's tunneled in. He's zeroed in on this one moment. He's failed so many times in his life up until this point. And the one thing he wanted, the one thing was to save the only father figure that he ever had. And he can't.
And so immediately Gon starts blaming himself. And just going on like this is my fault. Like I did I did this. I killed Kite. This is all my fault. And it's tearing him up. Right.
And then Patu's a fucking asshole for what he does.
And
yeah, like he just what's it? Yeah, as he's in the moment of just like kicking himself, blaming himself, like it's my fault he died. Patu brings out Dr. Blythe, and he's like, okay, he's pranking me, right? Where's the camera?
he's like, oh, he has it out. He's like, so it was just a lie. He's like, Kite really can be healed. And he's like, why are you healing yourself? He's like, you could do that later, please. And Gon's like begging. It's really sad. This is the entirety of the Chimera Ant arc, and we'll get to this, especially with Meruem's death, is a tragedy. From start to finish, the Chimera Ant arc is a tragedy. And Meruem's death is the best example of that. But Gon realizing Kite is dead, and then Gon's grow up, the panel.
Well, hold on. One thing I want to bring up. He goes through in this moment, you could say, like, all 5 stages of grief, denying the fact that he's dead, angry at himself, bargaining that, like, okay, maybe he can come back. She has Dr. Blythe out, being depressed that once again, like, immediately as he had hope, it's just ripped away. And then the most cruel fact is he accepts this and moves forward with what he wants.
But does he ever accept it? That's the question. I'd have to read it more to see if he really accepts it.
At least in the anime, he says, like, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. I don't care anymore. I'll use everything.
Oh yeah, that is what he said. And Patu's like, I was right. He's like, he could be a threat to the king. He's like, I gotta take him down now. And then go. Is it burnt? Did you drop it in dirt? No, grow up. And so he does.
Arguably the biggest moment in Hunter x Hunter is Gon's adult form. And
I had seen the panel. I knew that panel. And it's I call it the panel. I knew that panel.
Hunter x Hunter has a lot of quote unquote the panels. We never saw any panels like that from, I think, like Black Clover, but Hunter x Hunter has had a lot of the panel moments. The biggest.
This is the panel.
This is any Hunter x Hunter fan that sees this will start having goosebumps and freaking the fuck out. It is the panel. And this is where I wanted to just share my thoughts on it, because I had a lot of time to think on this. This is the climax, at least for Gon's characteristic of just his pure and utter selfishness. In the face of defeat, knowing that his only father figure in life can't come back, Gon, in a childish rampage, throws away everything that he could ever become. He gives up everything to achieve nothing. There is nothing that will be gained, like in the grand scope of things. Nothing to be gained from what he does against Patu. He goes big mode. Okay, he grow up. Haha. He goes big and just starts wailing on a helpless opponent. Does nothing. And when the line of "I'll use everything," that's a binding contract. What that means is he gives up all of his current power and everything he will ever become, and just throws it away. That's what makes it such a horrifying moment for Gon as a character.
And also we have Patu being like and the narrator was like, in his final moments, he was like, he was glad that he was the one getting this, because it was directed at him and not someone else.
Here's
not
one thing
the king, because it's the question of how strong was Gon at this point.
Well, I don't know if they say this in the manga, but in the anime, there's a line where Patu directly states, before fading into like unconsciousness, Gon's strength now rivals the king. In that moment, like, think about it like this: if Gon did this and beat Meruem, like that would have been like the typical shonen hero thing of he's using his power for the good and saving the world. No, he's using this untapped potential to just wail on a helpless opponent. And Patu's happy about it. Gon loses the battle and the war here. Patu's like, yeah, he's using up the strength that can rival the king on me, and I couldn't be happier.
And it's just, man, seeing Gon like that is.
when Killua shows up, oh no.
And he's just like, oh no. That's what Killua sounds like, actually.
And you know what happens? You remember whenever he takes off Gon's arm, and Gon's like, he kind of like, I'm happy that happened. I'm fine. I think he might have.
This is actually his Killua comes up and he just sees Gon just beating on Pitu's dead corpse.
Yeah. It's
just like, okay, Gon's gone. And Killua knows that too. He's like, Gon's gone. He's like, he went off the deep end.
And then Pitu's body
them kind of see each other, and Killua's like, Gon? And they're kind of looking at each other, and then Pitu gets back up, and it's like a post-mortem thing with his nin ability to like control his corpse. And it's the singular objective of killing Gon. And he attacks him. Killua pulls Gon out of the way, or Gon pulls, I don't know exactly which. And Gon loses an arm. And yeah, like you were saying, he's like, I'm happy about this, because he's like, now Kite and I are the same.
Yeah, Kite's pain. And then he not only eviscerates the remainder of Pitu, but I'm pretty sure the entire forest goes along with it.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's why
he like explodes or something.
It is a horrifying, disgusting scene to watch. It if you watch it like my friend Wyatt did, you're happy in that moment. But if you're any rational human being who has sat through this, you're horrified at Gon's actions.
It's a tragedy.
It, as you said, it is a tragedy, not a comedy.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I could say a lot more about it, but that's without stepping even further into the rabbit hole. Those are my thoughts on the moment. Anything
and also
else
finishing the Chimera Ant arc, like to say I know almost everything of theirs, but Chimera Ant arc is the thing that gets spoiled the most. I feel safer looking at stuff, not like completely safe, but I do still have 2.5 arcs to read. I don't know what happens with Gon from here on.
And for me, after the next arc, maybe we still have more to Chimera to talk about. It's not done yet. There's one arc in the anime left, and then after that, I am going to be reading the manga alongside Brandon for the next 2 arcs.
Yeah, it'll be fun, won't it?
Yeah, I'm excited.
So after this, after Gon nukes himself, we go back to Meruem, and we see the king is like, I'm going to go hunt down the stragglers because why not? It's just fun. And that's whenever he uses his in. That's just like zwomp, and everyone's like, uh-oh. And he uses it, he finds Knuckle and Malaron. And knocks him out. Yeah, he sends it back. He's like, you guys take care of this. I think that's whenever they start the game. Here, my next note is Octopus Guy meets with Palm and is somehow connected to Wolf Guy in his past life. Stuff.
He was friends with Welfin in the past life.
And
then, did we get the Welfin moment?
No. That's later.
Oh, okay.
We have the king remembering that he used to play Gunji with. He doesn't remember Komagi, but he remembers he used to play Gunji. And then we see Yuppie has died.
Oh yeah, because Welfin was there. What happened was Welfin was moving. Yuppie saw him. Welfin was questioning him, and then because whenever I was watching an anime, I thought like, holy shit, Welfin killed him. And Welfin's like, I did not do that. Like I didn't kill Yuppie. Yuppie just like started bleeding out and died. I don't know why. I don't know how. It wasn't me.
And then we get Palm saying and thinking that the king only has a few hours left to live. And this is where I believe this is where we get the whole exposition on the roses.
Yes,
and
with the rose.
We learn the terrifying fact that what is going to kill the king and the royal guards, other than Pitu, because Pitu's already dead, for another reason, it's not a person or nin or anything natural. It is radiation poisoning, essentially.
It's an instrument of war from humanity.
It is the cruelest thing humanity ever created versus the cruelest of the Chimera ants. And the cruelest thing humanity ever created won. Even the strongest Nen user Netero didn't stand a chance at beating them. He probably could have beat Yubi and Poof. He couldn't beat the king. But the nuke did.
Yeah, an instrument of war that humans created for the sole purpose of just pure annihilation against anything they deem a threat won out in the end. Very sad.
And this is where I can't wait to see the scene from the anime where we get Kingdom of Predators is the name of the song. My favorite song from the Hunter x Hunter OST, also known as the only one other than Departure that I have listened to.
You need to listen to a lot of
I will.
Steam Slash.
This moment hits different. Because it's the destructive nature of humanity on full blow. And it's at this moment that we realize as an audience. Because, you think the ants are winning. Netero's dead. The king is more powerful than ever. But we realize that it's already over.
Yeah.
And it's at this moment, too, I think, if I can remember correctly, where then we get that the king doesn't kill Poof, and then there's the funny moment with the wolf guy.
So, Netero, I think, isn't he just hungry?
Netero?
No, not Netero. Sorry, fuck. Mero. I'm sorry.
Kinda, and originally he's he looks at him and he's he knows that he can say one word. And if
hold on. I remember the background for it. Poof tells Meruem that Welfin also knows the secret that Poof knows, but hasn't never told him. I believe that's what it is.
Yeah, that is what it is.
And then Meruem he gets so pissed and it's just approaching I'm gonna eat you. And Welfin, in just a moment of sheer and utter fear for his life, ages about 100 years.
Yeah.
He becomes this little scraggly dog man. And he's thinking I can say one thing, one word, and then he'll kill me. What's the right word? And just out of every instinct in his head, he just says Komagi.
And what would you know? It happened to be the right word.
It happened to
The
be the
king
word.
remembers everything. And here we see it all settle in for the king with Yubi's death. And it all settles in for Poof too. They know what's going to happen. And here I wrote, the king remembers and he knows. At this point, Poof and the king know that they're already dead. They're going to die from the radiation poisoning. And as he's walking off, the king doesn't kill what's his name, the wolf guy. Welfin. He doesn't kill Welfin. And as he's walking off, Welfin shouts at him. He's like, Gyro's our true king. He's like, I hate you. He's like, I would never be your subordinate. Any other time, Meruem would just immediately kill him. But Meruem's, at this point, has already come to terms with his death. He doesn't want anything other than to see Komagi. And this is explained, this is shown especially well whenever he's talking to Palm later. He just says, is that so? He says, then I wish you a good life under him. And he walks off, and Poof breaks into tears because he knows the king has accepted his fate at that point. And he also has to. It's knowing that they're already dead and knowing that they know that makes this scene, with an otherwise joke character, hit very hard. This is the beginning of Meruem's death, which is phenomenal.
Is the next scene when he actually meets up with Komagi?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's later. What's the next note?
Well, it almost is.
Okay.
It's whenever he meets up with Palm.
Oh yeah, and then Palm.
And he asks Palm where is Komagi. And Palm doesn't want to tell him, but he's accepted his fate. He's and I think he tells her, he said, you guys have won. He's like, humanity's plans have won. He's like, we lost. He's like, the battle's already over. He's like, I just want to spend my final moments with her. And knowing his character, and the relationship he had with Komagi and the obvious love that is there. Is he human? What does it mean to be human? Or is he more human than humans at this point? It's a very human thing to want to be with the one you love at the end of your life. And for someone who's already accepted his fate, he almost bows to Palm. He's begging her. He says, "Please tell me where she is." And Palm, like almost not against her will, but she tells him. And he goes and he thanks her. And then we start the wrap up of the Chimera Ant arc. We see Welfin, Hina, and the politician head for Meteor City. As the dude's he's a wanted criminal now. We see the real leader of the country, because whoever it was just was like an imposter in his name. We see the real leader. He's just living a solitary life on a farm, and he reads. There's a bit of poetry about like the true nature of man and how destructive it is, which is a very strong secondary theme, especially in this later part of, it's an extension of what is humanity, and humanity versus the ants. That is the theme of the Chimera Ant arc. And so we get to see him, and he recites poetry about that, and he goes, when will people learn that all you need is just food, a house, and just to live your own life? We see Reyna, we see the lobster guy and the little ant girl go back to her village, and it's Reyna. It's the girl that was killed at the beginning. Colt's
Dude,
sister.
I'll admit, man, whenever I saw that in anime, like, I just couldn't hold it back. I cried. That
kind of got me a little bit too. Just this entire ending segment.
Oh, hard. Finally, like, after all this time, like, she finally gets to see her mother again. Just, it hurt.
And it hit different. This entire final section really wrapping up all of, in the anime, however many episodes, in the manga, 133 chapters, just wrapping it up. And it's meant to be sad because it's the end of a tragedy. And yes, she's back, and yes, it's a good moment, and it really does get to you, but it's still tragic, and that nothing's ever going to be the same as it was.
Oh, of course. After the Chimera Ant arc, though, like, the world of Hunter x Hunter, there's a lot of consequences to face after their attack. And we're currently seeing that. Well, what else? I know what you're saying.
We get to see Netero's his last message, where he says that there's going to be an election for the next chairman. He resigns, and it's his last will and testament. It's his last thing that he recorded.
Yeah, it's his final will. Do you see what happens with Gon, right?
Yeah, well, kinda. So this is where it's interesting in that I think the anime and the manga differ a little bit. In the manga, at least, all we see, we don't actually get to see Gon. We just see him. He's in a hospital. We don't see him. He's like in the room, and Kilo is outside, and he's like, I have to save him and help him. He's like, I'm never going to let Gon go off on his own again. He's like, I care about him too much. I wrote specifically, and this is probably more the wording that was used, as Killua promises to save Gon.
Yeah.
And again, just the relationship with Killua and Gon, which we've seen throughout the arc, and I've talked about multiple times. Getting to see that, and Killua, throughout, he's gone through his arc throughout this arc of realizing, like, that he needs to be there for Gon, even whenever Gon doesn't let him. It's such a complex relationship, and it's depicted so complexly that there's no way that I can fully understand or elaborate my thoughts on it after only a couple hours.
Of course.
But it's done so well, Um, we get to see
What else
Colt again,
Oh yeah, Cole.
and we get to see Colt, and he's taking care of the baby, which he tries to call Reyna, but it's not Reyna. It's Kite.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Kyle about this a little bit. I'll admit I don't fully understand the whole thing of it, because Kite died. He was not eaten because his body was still there, obviously. So how could his soul go into a Chimera ant? I don't know. I don't really understand that. But also there's the potential for that to be very strong. Because, and this is something I didn't realize until I read something on it. That baby is the twin of Meruem.
Yeah, no, I saw that on the wiki where it's like the Meruem's twin sibling.
Yeah. And that is insane. I don't know how much more we'll see them throughout Hunter x Hunter. But it is interesting. Again, just wrapping up more stuff. And then I think we get a little bit more in Palm specifically, who has seen the king with her new ability, and you can see him at all times, says that it's over.
So
and we get to...
Are we going to talk about the final segment with,
Yeah. We finally get to the moment that Kyle and I have been talking about throughout this entire... How long is this so far? 1 hour and 45-minute video. Which is the death of Meruem.
the end of the tragedy.
Meruem's death hit different.
Yeah, because on a
Man.
surface, when a villain dies in a shonen or is defeated, you typically and obviously the Hunter x Hunter is already different, but just generally, whenever a villain is killed or defeated, you feel relief. You feel happy. You're like, oh, cool. The good guys have won and the day is saved. That's not at all what you really feel in this final moment of Meruem and Komagi together.
It's just so sad. It hit different. But to see him go up and to see her excitement at seeing him again, and they start playing like nothing happened.
And then he tells her his name and that
my name is Meruem, and
he's dying.
Playing a little bit, and she starts crying, and she's like, "Is it okay for me to be this happy?" And that's when Meruem tells her, he said, "I gotta tell you," he said, "I've been poisoned." He's like, "I don't have long to live." And he said, "Me being around you puts your life in danger as well." And she's like, "Well, that's fine." He said, "I just want to play with you." And so they play. And I don't know how they did this in the anime, but in the manga, after that moment, it's just black panels with the speech. And it's from Komaki's perspective.
Hold on. Let me verify. Keep talking for a second, but hold on.
And you just see them playing, and you see the two of them talking, and Meruem occasionally making sure Komagi is still there. And the stuff gets a little more sporadic and a little slower until eventually Meruem tells Komagi, he's like, "I'm gonna go to sleep now." He said, "Will you be there for me when I wake up?" And she says, "Yes." And he goes, "Will you hold my hand while I go to sleep?" And she says, "Yes."
That damn panel. That one. Anytime I see it, I can't hold myself back.
And then we get to their deaths, and the panel of her holding him.
So how it was in the anime was it's a lot of darkness, but there's a light, almost like a light bug. It's not like a bug literally, but it's a little blip of light floating around. It shows some of them playing, and then it shows moments of their hands holding, and then the final the final piece of Meruem being laid to rest upon Komagi's lap.
Their death hit different.
Did I not tell you this arc would be just hit different?
talking about it has definitely given me a more appreciation for it.
A greater perspective. This, from what we talked about, this entire trilogy, this is why this arc is highly regarded as it is. It's viewed as one of the best for all of these reasons. It's not just your average good versus bad, which I mean, a lot of writing can handle and do like this, but this arc, the Chimera Ant arc, is just so unlike anything I've ever seen before, and you walk out of it just with so much. You've seen, so you feel like after, at least for me in the anime, after like 60 to 70 episodes, you just kind of walk out and you just feel like a survivor. That's the only thing I can describe it. Like, you know, some people would be like, oh, you know, it's a fictional media, can't hurt that hard. And then you just show them the panel of Meruem and Komagi holding hands and like, fuck. It hurts so much to look at that. Just capping off all the tragic moments that happen.
Moving into the final thoughts to hopefully prevent this video from actually going to 2 hours.
Yeah. What were your final thoughts after you marinating on it a bit, the entire Chimera arc? Like, what are your thoughts after talking?
I won't consider it better than Shibuya or Marineford, but I will put it right next to them.
That is a fair placement.
This is definitely an arc that you have to think about, and I can really appreciate that. The genius of it isn't blatantly obvious the first time you go through it. And, you know, it's like that with a lot of ways. You know, the more I watch Marineford, the more I like it. You know, the more I read Shibuya, the more I like it. I can't wait for Shibuya to be animated.
Oh, of course. That's gonna be phenomenal.
But I am very much looking forward to watching this arc and just appreciating it more. It does so much, and it does so much well. I will 100% say that, in my opinion, Meruem is one of the best written antagonists in anime. I think his death is one of the best written deaths in anime that I personally have seen or read. I mean, it gets to you. You know, something that can make you feel like that. That kind of experience is, if you can read something that gets to you like that, then it deserves praise. Just kind of thinking, I'm kind of at a loss for words, because it's such good writing.
As I said, it's unlike anything I've read before. You know, as much as I love, that's why, you know, whenever I tell people who've never seen Hunter x Hunter, like, Hunter x Hunter is in my top 3, a lot of that, the Chimera arc heavy carries on its shoulders that, like, that top spot. You know, like, overall, had the arc not happened, and I don't know, like, something else happened that wasn't as impactful, and it just moved on to chairman election onward, like, I'd still really like Hunter x Hunter. I don't know if I'd call it a top 10 at the point, but it's the Chimera Ant arc alone that just, with broad shoulders, elevates the series to why I put it in my top rankings.
If I had to summarize the Chimera Ant arc in just one sentence, it's just good writing.
But that alone does not do it enough justice.
You can't summarize the Chimera Ant arc in one sentence.
You could summarize themes, but to just you can't word the entire Chimera arc and what happens in it just in one sentence. There's no way.
Yeah.
I am very happy to have retaken this you know, not only back in Hunter x Hunter, but this arc especially. Just rereading the wiki and talking about it, and it just reminded me of just so much of what I felt in the middle of watching it. And just getting to re-explore some of my favorite bits in a shonen, such as the stuff with Netero or Gon, and how they're the protagonists but portrayed as antagonists, and getting to see the relationship expanded upon between Meruem and Komagi. Just beautiful.
I figured out I can summarize the Chimera Ant arc in 3 words.
Goonskin's cat?
It hits different.
I like both of our answers, but I like your answer better.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I like your answer. With that, do you have any closing thoughts, Kyle? Do you have anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up the amazing Goobers and Screens book club trilogy on the Hunter x Hunter, Chimera, and Arc? Any final words to say, Kyle?
If you've watched this far, clearly there's something you like, but I'm not going to steal Brandon's bit. What I'm going to say is, just go read and or watch the damn show.
Yeah, don't even don't dislike this video. If you made it, dislike the video.
Go watch Hunter x Hunter, especially go watch the Chimera arc. You won't regret it.
Even if you've already seen it, watch it again.
I'm gonna watch it again probably. Like I'll just talk about.
I'm going to technically watch it for the first time. I will experience it for a second time, very shortly.
But you will experience it in the anime for the first time. But those are my closing thoughts. It is one of my favorite written pieces of media, and I'm very happy that I got to discuss it with you.
All right. Thank you all for watching, and look forward to the next video, which will be a little underwhelming after this 2-hour magnum opus of our reviews of the chairman election arc. We very much look forward to seeing you guys there, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.